There we go. My name is Coral McKenna. I'm a teacher specialist here at OIT. I work, my background is in middle school, and I work primarily with the high schools now. I suppose starting with an anecdote might work, would be nice. I've always wanted to be a teacher who could incorporate coding or computational thinking in the classroom, but frankly, I was never quite sure how to do that or what that looks like, being that I don't really have a coding background, but I know that it's important to students and I know it's important to their futures. So, I would go to PDs about coding and none of them really could I walk away with like, well, what do I actually do with this? How do I get students to code in my classroom? Because I don't have time to, you know, I don't have the background or time to give them a full computer science lesson, but I also need them to be able to produce a product, right? And so being able to change that lens a little bit to say there's going to be a little bit of you learning with them or you teaching, but we're going to turn, and what I'm going to show you today are different vehicles that you can use that allow students to use coding to express their understanding. So they're going to code things like sprites to make a cartoon about a concept, right? And so they're going to be using the coding to make that cartoon, and a cartoon about a concept is something you can assess for their learning, right? And so there is that tie in, right? So K-12, it doesn't really matter if your students, this is all block-based coding, although many of them can be used with text-based coding. So if you are in our upper grade levels, I always like to say that you can start with block. Most of the kids by later high school that I have worked with have some experience with it. And so you can do one lesson in block, and then we start to transition them into text-based coding. And if you're elementary, keep them in block. If you're middle school, it depends on where they are and how many projects you do. But if it's something that you're incorporating, let's say once or twice a quarter, as little things that you can do, kind of like a one pager, then you can start to transition them into the text-based coding as you go through. But a lot of our students who have experience with coding, it's all block-based coding, right? And so we don't have a whole lot of experience with text. So I wanted to give you that background because I think it's important to know where I'm coming from. I also got to meet with a former student who is going into computer science next year, and she said she was talking about what she remembers about my class, and had just said that we must have done something with computational thinking because she really did that, and she goes, it would be really cool um, if your classes, like if in your classes you had done more with coding, because I think I would have got started with it sooner. And so I guess I took it on as like a challenge from a former student who said, you did a lot for me, but you could have done this other small thing. And I think it would have been neat. So here we are. Anyways, that is my antidote to kind of get us started. So um, we are going to talk about the basics of coding. We're going to talk about Code Core Studios, Brainpop, and SpheroBolt's RVR. You will get to do a little bit of coding and see what I mean. And if you are using the Wixie, whoops, there we go. If you are using your Wixie journal, I guess we could call it, you're keeping track with your travel guide, you can click on the link that I'm posting in the chat now. That will give you this fun icon that you can drop into your journal. All right, so if you are following along, you can grab that and you can add that while you take your notes in your note catcher. All right. So, some considerations when we're thinking about doing something like coding with students. Make sure you're selecting the right program for the job. And so do you want your students to create a physical model of something? Do you want them paying attention to syntax and grammar? What is it that you're trying to get them to do? Is it just an expression? Are you looking for, quite literally, a replacement for, create a cartoon? They can do that. Are you looking to get them to pay close attention to detail? Like I said, syntax, grammar, language structure, then you're going to want to pick something that has a text-based editor, because we can do a lot of that with text-based. Kids probably know more about block coding than you think they do. All right, they may not always be familiar with it, and they may not know how to use it to solve a problem, create a solution, or complete an explicit task, but they will have, most likely, depending on their grade level, a general understanding of block-based coding. In 8th grade, they all have to do a block-based coding project. So at the very least, if you're in high school, they've at least had that experience. Start with the basics. The very first time you ever use it, just like with any application, be prepared to spend a little bit of time modeling what you're going to do, work through it with them. All the applications I'm going to show you have built-in lessons so that you can I do, we do, you do. You can work through the first few steps with them. Then you can have them work through a step or two and kind of come back and check it, and then push them off on their own to continue working, right? But it probably will take 30 to 45 minutes, or it can take up to 30 to 45 minutes that first time that you're getting them in, to really make sure that you think they feel comfortable with what you're asking them to do. Um, it doesn't have to be every day and all day, but it's really great to have a few projects or concepts. And in your classroom, it may just be suited as an alternative assignment or extension activity, but I recommend that you do it at least one time, whole group. Everyone has to participate before you just create it as an option for them to use. Okay, so just some considerations. So, what can coding in a different academic classrooms look like? in in English language arts, we could be helping make students make connections between coding with proper syntax and writing with correct grammar, because coding has its own syntax and grammar. With math, we could create and run a random code generator to explore probability or visually explore relationships between time and distance. Let's say making like a graph. You're having your robot run along a path, and you would be able to extrapolate the data from that. A lot of data sets in coding. In science, you could code a robot to model different types of waves, using the code to change the wavelength, amplitude, and frequency. And social studies, you could analyze various data sets for correlation, causation, etc. You can also use it as, like I said, a canvas to have students do what we already have them doing. Things like one-pagers, cartoons, memes, that can all be used as well. And that's really what we're going to focus on today, are those simple tasks that we can have them do. All right, so we're going to start with Code Course Studios. A couple things to know about Code Course Studios. It can be accessed through ClassLink. However, students must use it in anonymous mode. All right, so at this point, I'm going to share a different screen, and I'm going to jump into the Code Course Studios. And I'm going to walk through how do you create your account, how do you create your classroom, and then how do you get those anonymous accounts for your students? Because that's really going to be the important part, is the anonymous account. So what that basically means is you're not using it, they're not signing in with Google, right? They're going to sign in a different method. So it says it's sharing my screen. I'm looking at Tracy's computer. Yeah, that's weird. Give me a second here, y'all. We are going to look at that. It's grayed out. I can't. There we go.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm gonna get there. It's not my first day, but seems like it. Really seems like it. Okay. So we are gonna start on ClassLink. On ClassLink, you should have an icon that is called Code Studio Courses. You can click on that to open it. All students have access to it in ClassLink. Okay. What you are going to do, I already signed in, but if you go up to the button in the top, it should say sign in or sign up, and you can log in using your Google button and your account. So I'm going to have you do that now. Y'all can give me thumbs up when you have your account. Jillian's there. She's got it. Perfect, 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 perfect. So your screen should look like mine. Now, I'm going to walk you through this. There are instructions on how to do this. I have instructions on the slide, and you will have access to them, right? And the recording. So, it's okay. So next, what we are going to do is from the dashboard, right? You should be in your dashboard. But if you click on my dashboard over in the upper left-hand corner, there's right here in the middle, it says create a section. And you can click create a section. And here's where you get your options. You are either going to use your picture password or your secret word. You are not using personal logins. You are not using Google Classroom. Picture password or secret word. You can select whichever one you want. I'm going to do secret words. It is then going to ask you to name your class. You can check any grade levels that you need to a class that you need to. You can also assign curriculums, but you don't have to. None of the rest of this is anything that you have to do. If you have co-teachers, you can add their co-teachers. And then you can also save and add another class section, right? So if you're trying to make multiple classes, you can. And then you can finish creating your sections. Once you've done that, you are able to, it should pop up here. You can see I have a couple classes. You are going to click the Add Students button. Now, from here, you can use the button to add multiple students. And you really have two options. You could just do numbers, like literally, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Or you can just do first names and a last initial if you have a duplicate. That sort of thing. You're just typing in first names only. First names are fine. They don't fall under the PII. You're not giving last names, emails, birth dates, anything like that. Once you have your student's name, first names typed in, you can click done. And what it's going to do is, and you don't have to fill out any of the rest of these, but you have these print login cards. If you print login cards, it's actually going to, on your screen, what you'll end up seeing is a page that you can print out, obviously. But this is where like the secret word and picture come up. Of course, we are only mildly cooperating today. I promise that I check all of these things before I do these trainings, these presentations, whatever you want to call them. And I promise you that they work because I did it. I'm going to try one more time. Add students or login info. Login info or add students will get you there. But yeah, what it's supposed to, it didn't even save my students. Okay. Someone put something in the chat. Yeah, there's actually 2 questions in the chat when you get a chance. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I'm sorry. I have to save all. That purple button that says save all at the top. Then you can print login cards. It didn't give me login cards because I didn't save all. All right, let's see. Is code.org still part of the elementary? I don't know of that. I don't know if it's part of the elementary. Is there a way that would make it easier than typing in 350 sixth graders? I mean, you could get a list from your the person in your front office, or you could have your classroom teachers make their lists and then add you as a co-teacher. So you would get a page that looks like this, right, with a card. And you could give each student the card. And here you see that secret name, or this was a secret word. If it's a secret image, it would have the image there, but it tells them how to get in. Right? So the nice thing about this, and we have to be careful because Code Studios is not approved for students to have their own accounts with their email, but it is approved with anonymous accounts. So I wanted to make sure we went through how do we create the anonymous account? And what does that look like? Once they save their login, they're able to log in and out. They only have to do that the first time, right? Okay. So, now that we've gone through that, so maybe you probably didn't add all of your students, which is fine because something you can do later. Next, we are going to explore what Code Studios has to offer. So let's go ahead. From here, I'm going to click on that code button in the upper left-hand corner to be taken back to my home page. You can click on Course Catalog. From your course catalog, I'm going to talk about the filters real quick. From your course catalog, I recommend going to topic and interdisciplinary and art and design for sort of our standard content teachers, although there are a lot of other, digital literacy things that you can explore. But interdisciplinary and art and design are going to give you fairly generic things that can apply to any content. So they are going to teach the students, and then the students are going to be able to use that to create a creative project, like a cartoon or a poem or something. So under duration, you have school year, semester, quarter, month, week. Lesson is going to give you something that you could do. Think of it like a one pager, right? You could do that in one high school class period or two middle school class periods. You can use it as, again, remember, we're thinking of this as the vehicle for students to showcase their understanding, right? So that's going to narrow it down so you don't have too many to deal with. Go ahead, spend a couple minutes looking through these. Quick view. We'll show you a video with and an introduction. All right, so I'm going to set a timer for 3 minutes, or actually 4 minutes, and let you kind of explore, if you've used those filters, kind of explore the options. Let's see. Could we give the kids section code instead of typing their names? The problem with the section code, Christina, is they need an account in order to use the section code. So no, because you need to create the account for them with their you need to create the anonymous account for them. Once you create the anonymous account, then they can join using the section code. But you have, so the creating what we just did wasn't about joining your class. It was more about also making sure they have an anonymous account. Merit, the directions are actually on the screen now on the left-hand side. And these will be sent out, but essentially you go to your dashboard and you'll see the prompt to create a section. You just have to use either secret words or secret pictures as the option. You have about 2 minutes left. Feel free to drop in the chat or unmute if you found an activity that piqued your interest, that you thought was interesting. If you have a use case. Yes, they are going to be similar to Scratch. Ooh, yes, the Coda book cover. That one takes a little longer, if I'm not mistaken, but certainly, certainly a fun one, especially if you've already gotten your students used to using the Sprite Lab, AI Code of Ethics. All right, that is our 4 minutes. So, like I said, some people have already done it, dropped in the chat something they found that they thought was interesting. The hello world stuff is actually really simple and can be used. It's just an introduction to what they call their Sprite Lab, which their Sprite Lab can be used to code any sort of visual that you would have done on paper or in something like Adobe Express or Wixie, any of that, right? From what have I said? One pagers, graphic organizers, timelines, comics, memes, four corners, graphic organizers, not four corners, sorry, the Frere model, all of those things is something their Sprite Lab, your students could use the Sprite Lab to do. And any of these Hello World little mini lessons would teach them how to use it. And then they get a blank canvas to make whatever they want, right? So you can do kind of one of these mini lessons, learn how to use it, and then, they have however long. I think I did it in 20 minutes. So if you're working with it through them, and maybe, we're going to do these little things, learn how to use it, and then you have the remainder of the class period and sometime tomorrow to design a cartoon about what you've learned about gravity, right? And so all of those work really nice. AI for oceans, neat. Okay, so let me. All right, we are going to stop here. So in the code.org, Tracy had shared in the chat a code earlier to join my class. So if you have clicked on that and joined my class, you can go to your dashboard. And I've got about 4 of you in my eCoach day. Or sorry, 6 of you. I've got 4 of you in my other class that I created. If you scroll down to your courses, you should see the options that you have for the poem art or a hello world. Mine's going to look a little different as a teacher. I think you see poem art first. Is that correct? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Poem art? All right. You only have poem art. That's fine. So we are going to continue that lesson. I'm going to click on it. You can open it. You can view the lesson plan, that sort of idea. This tells you what it would look like. Skill building. So it's already going to put you through these kind of little mini lessons. Now, admittedly, I'm going to do this, and I haven't done this one yet. We're going to see what it looks like. The videos are always helpful. They kind of explain and show you what you're going to do. We're going to kind of skip this part of it, but it would be important for your students to watch, and you can do this whole class. And then from here on your right-hand side, there might be a little panel. If you're signed in as a teacher, you can view the page as a teacher or a student, right? At the top, it's giving you these instructions. So this is what you would be doing with your class live on your smartboard to kind of walk them through. When you read this poem, what feeling do you get? What color matches that feeling? Connect blocks from the toolbar under Win Run to build your program. Find a background and text effects that matches the mood of this poem. Change the colors of your effects or the text, right? So it wants us to set the background. I can change the color, right? I can set a text color, right? I can set a background. That's a background color. I can set a background image. There's a few different images I can have, right? Lots of various things. Um, I can set the font, right? So when once I do that, and honestly, these can be as quick as you want, play around with them. Um, once I do that, it's going to run through the code, right? When it gets to the end, it will automatically say, okay, good, you finished that. Right? So keep playing, continue. It's going to move our green little dot at the top to our second step in this. Yeah, and you can click on poem art. That was the one I kind of dropped in there for you. Read the poem. What sounds and matters come to mind? I want to sing birds. All right, so what sounds and images come to mind? Birds, birds, sky, clouds. Click run. Not uh, I'm not sharing my tab, but there is audio that is happening. And I had said bird, sky, clouds, so there's clouds going by, bird noises were happening, which is kinda neat. That's gotta be AI. So, um, because I have other things I wanna show you, I won't spend the entire time going through these. However, I wanted to give you an idea of how this uses coding, right, to this. At the very end of this, which we can hop to the free play part of it, um, they are going to write their own poem, create their own background, that it's going to give them a video to show them what they can do, but they can create their own, right? Which is a really neat way to do this. With something like um, and I will show you with something like the Hello World, it does the same thing, although with the Hello World, like let's say the space, it walks you through how to create the little graphics. It's also, this one would be great for making cartoons. You can click on them, you can time them, you can have them interact with each other, but it walks you through, again, each of these little lessons, right? And so I can move where it is, I run it, it starts spinning, right? And I can continue to add these things. But the little lessons actually aren't bad. They're pretty short and they just kind of walk the kids through each step. And then by the time they get to the end, they're able to understand how to use all of these tools. Okay. So um, that is the basics of the Code Studio. Does anyone have any questions? The you can get directly, like with the create button, you can go directly to the sprite lab, which is going to be really similar to, let's say, what the Hello World was. And students, once they're familiar with how it works, like you said, it's kind of like Scratch, right? They can create their own work from scratch without a prompt. So you get a lot more stuff. The nice thing about using some of the like Hello World things is it limits what they have access to. I liked it because I could totally see using it just in place of what I would have already done when we have things like make a cartoon, right? I can have them code it instead. Okay, any other questions about Code Studios? How it works? You can drop in the chat if you can think of an idea of something you could have students create in your class or have them do in your class. Love to hear it. All right, this next one that I want to talk about is Brainpop. Now, you may or may not have access to Brainpop at your school. All middle schools have access to it, some elementary schools, some high schools. If you do have access to it, Brainpop Creative Coding is going to be very similar to it's going to be very similar to what we just did in code, but it's already it's going to be based in Brainpop. So essentially, from your once you select a Brainpop video, it's going to give you several different options. It's going to give you your prompt, and then it's giving you your step-by-step directions on the left-hand side of your screen, telling you what to put on your canvas and gives you the preview of what you're actually making in real time. So if you do have access to Brainpop, we are going to go into there next and sort of explore this real quick. Every video in Brainpop has the creative coding option. It can be assigned. This option is going to give you both options that are block-based and text-based. The block is from Scratch, and the text-based coding is from VidCode. They have built-in prompts. You don't have to come up with a prompt. And they're already based on the videos. I'm going to go into engineering and tech, computer science, and Grace Hopper. Here I can see the option for creative coding. Again, it doesn't matter where you go. In Brainpop, they all have that option. Here are your projects. So the ones that say based on Scratch, these are all block-based code. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. Those are all going to be block-based coding. If you're working with elementary school, great place to start. Middle school, high school, you can start to work with the VidCode. VidCode is going to be text-based coding. So you can see that kind of explains there's a weather forecast that you put together, a comic, a meme. So I'm going to click on meme. But I do, if you're following along with me, click on one of the vid codes, not the Scratch. So create a meme about Grace Hopper. That's what we're going to do. All of your directions are on this right-hand side. Or sorry, left-hand side. The first thing it wants you to do is kind of explore what backgrounds you have, the graphics that you have, and your sprites. Sketch your meme on a piece of paper, and then click next to get started. First thing we're going to do is add a background. You'll see the 2 lines of code. So here's our code starting to come into our workspace. Next, we're going to add a sprite. I guarantee you the first thing that will happen when your students add a sprite is they're going to click on it and try to move it. It doesn't work that way. So I always tell them, you're going to have to code that. So here it's telling you that notice the 1 in my graphic 1 is referring to that graphic. If you add a second graphic, it'll turn to a 2. Now we're going to change its scale, which it's telling you what you have to type. There's that 1.scale equals 3. Oops. Made it huge. Okay, let's try 1.5. Made it much bigger. So we're going to continue moving. It's then going to get them into how to move it on their screen. It's got an x-axis and a y-axis. I don't know what it's going to be. So I've made a syntax error. That should be a 1. And so it's giving me a bit of assistance there with telling me I have made an error in my code and opened up something I didn't mean to. There you go. So as you work through these, it's going to have you change the color. It may have you click. I'm going to give you, again, about 3 minutes. Sorry, I don't have a ton of time to play with your creative code. If you don't have Brainpop, you can go back to what you're working on in the code studio. But yeah. All right, that is our that is our 3 minutes there. So yeah, tell me in the chat. Have you ever used it? Have you ever seen it? Easier, harder, interesting? Have you ever text-based coded? I had never text-based coded. I used text to do coding before I tried this. Or you can unmute, one or the other. Yeah, people hadn't used it or tried it. it's pretty neat. I think it's so. By the way, we immediately jumped into this. From here, you can assign it to your students just the way you would normally assign things in Brainpop. The Yeah, Chris, I get that a lot actually with the whole websites, and a lot of our students, that's their experience. So doing things like this is fairly novel for them because they haven't used it in this way. It's always very, I don't want to say practical, but it's the websites. And this is a little bit different than coding a website. You're not having to create the sprites and things like that, but it's fun even for your students who are taking computer science. If you've got the high school students who are in AP computer science, I did this with a Girls Who Code Club at Broadneck a couple weeks ago, and they loved it. They just had a lot of fun, with it because what they do with it is build websites or a database. The nice thing about Brainpop is they're all tied to Brainpop videos. So you really can have them watch a video and then have them create a meme about a keyword from the video. Sorry. I'm sorry, Virginia. That's Virginia, that's funny. So this is the language of JavaScript, but what is great about it is it does allow students to just interact with something that's maybe new for them. And this is one of those things where you can do this level of even text-based coding with your middle schoolers who might have a lot of experience in block-based coding, but not yet text-based coding. So it's a very good transitional activity. And you, even as a teacher, we always say it's great for you to make your exemplar. But as you can see, it's just a little bit of trial and error. And that trial and error is really a huge part of it. Okay, so with the 10 minutes we have left, the last thing I want to go over is using our Sphero bolts and RVR to so the Sphero bolts and RVR, when you get the Sphero EDU app, have the options for both block and text-based coding. Students can start immediately from a blank canvas, very simply without needing even to sign in. They can just get the blank canvas, connect to the robot, and go. This one is really neat because it actually is coding something physical in the world rather than something on their screen that they're looking at. They use it, they can run their code, and their code is being carried out by this external device. Meredith, I'm going to answer your question. Could you allow them to choose what type of coding they want to do in Brainpop? I believe the answer to that is yes. You would just show them how to get to creative coding because they can search the whole library of Brainpop. Although I can't remember right now, if you go into Brainpop and click just assign from the video, if you click creative coding from there, if it gives them the option, but you could do that. Either whether they find it and then turn it into you, or you just assign them the category of creative coding. Sorry, before I get too far off on this. So the Spheros both can create, they can carry out code on the physical device. They have a lot of programs in Sphere that you can run where students can work on syntax and grammar and debugging. But they also can, there's a lot of really high level math where it can spit out, randomized numbers that you could use for problems, right? There's a lot of graphs and sensors inside of them. So you could do a lot of data analysis from it. I have a video I can share with you from a algebra class that was using these. I will play it for you. It's a little silly. The kids got to choose all their own sound effects and things, but here we go.
I am at the vertex of 5,2. This is the absolute value function with a slope of 1. It is shifted up 2 and right 5.
So that is just a small example of sort of an extension activity they were doing. I think this was done kind of the day before break. They were doing an overview of absolute value and what they had been learning. The teacher brought in the bolts really just to change it up, to give them that. And the students were able to, again, use block-based coding. And she did this in one class period. So um, in, in a very simple way, she was able to give them this, get them hooked up, and they were able to produce this in just one class period without, this was the first time her class had ever used the sphero bolts. So it is one of those really neat things that you bring them in and kids get excited about them because it is different and it is interesting and it's challenging, but not too challenging. It's just challenging enough. It's a great activity that is in and of itself, I like to say it self scaffolds. Let me go to my next page here. There we go. I like to say that it self scaffolds because your students who maybe have more coding experience or are really into it will always take it to the next level. They will continue to run with it. Your students who need a little bit more assistance, those scaffolds are built into all of these programs to help them move through the activity, and you're able to help them as well. But it naturally encourages them to ask each other, how did you do that? How did I do that? So you're getting that collaboration aspect. They're asking questions. They're challenging themselves to do something that they just want to do. And they're challenging themselves without anyone prompting them to do it. So it really brings out a different side of your students. And it's such a fun avenue for them. I know that I brought the bolts into my classroom. My COTA and neurodivergent students really benefited from when we do these sorts of activities, they really have to slow down and focus on one thing. And being able to slow down and focus each day on a different part of what we were learning really really reinforced what we were doing. And it was, great for them. The trial and error nature of the robots and of coding in general is something that students, they just don't want to, right? When was the last time you gave a student a worksheet back to redo it and they put that much energy into redoing it as they would if they were trying to code the meme in the Brightspace layout or create a cartoon in Code Studio, where they're constantly doing this trial and error to get it exactly the way they want. They're getting them to come back. We're building that resilience in them. So, like I said, it's great to have your whole class do an activity like this together at least once throughout the year so your students know it's an option. We also have to expose them to the different things that they can do and the different types of projects and ways that they can express themselves. And then, it's up to you. But it's something that can be incorporated into your lessons as an extension, as an alternate activity, or as just reinforcement and reteaching. Laura, question.
It's not so much a question. I just wanted to echo what you were saying. I hate coding. I hate doing it myself. I cannot stand it. It is not anything that I like at all. But when I pushed myself and I did it in the classroom, it was a game changer. The kids loved it. It was interactive. They were all in. A lot of the things you just mentioned. So I am a reluctant convert, but just kind of like if you're sitting here and you're like, oh my God, I can't even with all of this. The kids know more about it than you do, and it really goes a long way.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about we hold our students back because of our own reservations, right? And we want to make sure that we're experts, and that's not necessary. It's not necessary for us to be an expert in that thing, but we do owe it to our students to give them the experience to try it, because we don't know who's going to really like it and who's going to really thrive in that environment. And I was the same way. I avoided it because I had never really done it and I wasn't really sure how to use it. And I feel like had I had something like this that was like, oh, it's just another way to draw a picture, and here's how you draw a picture with it, maybe I would have been more willing to, to step out and to use it in that fashion sooner. But yeah, it's just such a great way to get exposure to our students to more things. They may find that they love it, right? Maybe I've dealt with plenty of students who are like, oh yeah, I know how to code. and then I throw the text-based stuff at them, and they're like, "Oh, okay, well, I know how to do the block-based coding." You're like, "Okay, well, it's time to level up. It's time to try it this way." So glad that was your experience, Laura. I hope you got something out of this. I'm going to close with our last 4 minutes with this video from Edutopia on coding, supporting language learning. I loved this video when I saw it, and I think it's a great closure for this. So I'm going to mute and play this.
I want you to look at lesson number 1. Can you tell us what the Angry Bird has to do?
It's not 3, 4.
You're right. Count with me. 1, 2. Because we leverage future-ready skills like computer science and multiliteracy, our newcomers are becoming effective communicators, collaborators, critical thinkers, and most of all, problem solvers. We have approximately 10 primary languages that are spoken within the community of Selma. About 1 out of every 4 students has been in our language development classes. So very diverse. Today we're going to be working on our computers. You're going to open your iPad and you're going to turn on your Wi-Fi. We're primarily an ag-based community, and so with that, many of our students have not had those opportunities with technology like other students throughout California. I want my students to have creative opportunities to demonstrate their language proficiency. We're going to start from the beginning. Why can't we marry computer science and language development? And then start with number 1. Every year, the students create an app. But in order for them to do the app, we have to build the foundational skills. And so we use an app called Lightbot. That Lightbot is a simple, kid-friendly, critical thinking app that allows them to accomplish certain tasks. As they progress through the different lessons, it becomes a lot more rigorous. Good job. Give yourselves a big hand. Then from there, we transition them into an online curriculum via code.org. Many of you had a hard time with activity 13, so take a look up here. So you can provide the content, but still have that language development right underneath. U and R makes the sound. And then the next phase, we use App Inventor by MIT, which really allows students to create an Android-based app.
La aplicación que estamos haciendo es como que nos ayuda a leer y a pensar críticamente para resolver algo que no sabemos.
What kind of app are they going to be creating?
Classroom.
Correct.
They're creating an app that has to do with language development.
Les puede ayudar a los que apenas están comenzando, como pueden, esa aplicación les puede ayudar a leer, escribir, a escuchar o hablar.
We are truly equipping our newcomers for tomorrow's world. To be able to create something and to share a passion project goes a long way, and it also engages students. When there's buy-in and you're allowed some freedom, and especially to be creative, students get excited about the learning process. Guys, good job today. Let's put our stuff away.
All right, hopefully that left you with a a good inspired feeling to try this before the year's out. I always say we have spring break coming up. It's a great activity to try on one of those days. We have the end of the quarter coming. Also a great thing to do on our 2-hour early dismissals because you can fit it in there. We have 2 days. You can teach one day and have them do something the next day, have them do a reflection on their learning. That's what they can create or they can build. That can be your prompt. And yeah, thanks for coming. The attendance link was in the chat. And Laura, that's awesome. If you have any questions, you can always reach out. If you do this with your students, I would love to come out. I would love to see what they create. You can email it to me. You can invite me to see it live. But yeah, thanks everyone.